Welcome to Dynasty Football Analytics. I am Adam Wilson at AJWilly2 on Twitter. Here with Jordan McNamara at McNamara Dynasty. Jordan, you were doing a startup draft, buddy, and you were running into problems making a decision, which I think a lot of people can relate to. So let's get into it.
Yeah, it's a super flex tight end premium. The tight end, I know I sent you over the draft.
Yes.
Sort of the goings on. It's 2 points per reception. And I'll just say from the start, Mahomes goes 101. We're not going to do every pick, but just a couple of things that I think are interesting. Mahomes goes 101 over Barkley. Gurley fell to, just data points for folks. Gurley fell to 203, which would have been running back 5.
Yep.
And there were 3 tight ends in the first round: Kelsey, Kittle, and Zach Ertz. This is a 2 point per reception for tight ends, straight PPR for everyone else. So you're getting the big bump there. It's interesting. I see the Kittle thing, and I've seen this a bunch of places that people are propping up Kittle and tight end premium for receptions. The premium for receptions actually hurt him last year relative to the position because he didn't have a ton of catches. He had a lot of long catches for
long touchdowns.
Right. So it was not and I think he was like 15, 16 yards per reception receiver. So people are missing that. Anytime the rules change in terms of anything going away from stock, I think you have to think about it and how it affects the position as a whole. And so folks are bumping up the position, but a lot of the warp analysis that we've done, the replacement value, those things all bump up too, right? The position itself is getting treated differently. So it's not as much how many points they score relative to other positions. I think the right way to think about it is how they score relative to each other. And then that sort of tells you, to me, really how you should look at these premiums. And so the 3 tight ends in the first round, in terms of scoring, they might fit there, but I'm not sure that I like that as a strategy build because, in terms of the relativity of it, it's just not quite that. It's not quite that straightforward, but that's certainly interesting. Gurley as 5 is interesting. And I thought the other thing that opened my eyes when it happened was Mayfield at 105 as quarterback 2, ahead of Luck, ahead of Watson, ahead of Rodgers, obviously, right behind Mahomes. So basically the top 5 go Mahomes, Barkley, Zeke, McCaffrey, and Baker. Number 1 wide receiver off the board is Odell Beckham. Number 2, a couple picks later, is DeAndre Hopkins. So that was I think we had talked about that.
We did, yeah.
Yeah, sort of how we felt about that. I still think they're pretty close, but it's interesting to see Beckham back above Hopkins as a data point. I traded out of the first, no surprise. I got a second, a third. So basically, I traded with the person that had the 101. I drew 106 randomly. I set the market. I got his basically his 2-3 turn and a 2020 first round pick. And I kicked in a later. I think I kicked in a 10th or something like that. So
this was a guy picking 101 then.
Yeah, a guy picked 101. I straight traded out of the first round, got a second, a third, and a future first.
Yes. See, this is crazy to me. So who he took at 106 was Kamara. So he starts out with Mahomes and Kamara, and then he's not going to have a second or a third round pick now, and he's losing out on the 2020 first. I mean, I think I would have rather just sat at 101 and made the pick. We've seen where these, the players that go in the 2-3 turn, and I think the team would actually be better had he just stayed at 101, made the pick, and then made the pick at the 2-3 turn.
Yeah, and one thing of note about this league too is you start 11 players. So anytime you're starting more than, if you're in leagues where you're starting 8-9 guys, right? The players matter more. Individual
Mhm.
players matter more. When you're starting 10, 11, some of these deeper leagues start even more. The individual player matters a little bit. They win you less games on their own. So you sort of have to think about, it's a lot of, I like these formats where it's different than just stock in terms of different scoring, because you have to think about how you want to build and how to optimize. And it gives you can create a lot of value if you're thinking about it strategically and going about it in a different way than the market is. I would say, generally speaking, in this, it was tough to trade down. We'll get to that in a minute, but I set the market almost immediately once once the picks were drawn. I was sending out offers almost immediately to trade down because I wanted to get there first.
So was the trade made while you were on the clock, or was it after names? So this guy did it not even knowing who was going to be available at 106.
Correct. And I knew, this is I think my second startup this year. I knew going in what to sort of expect in that range. And I'd come up with a plan on sort of how I wanted to build. And I don't want to talk about that too much because the draft's still going on, but we'll probably talk about it more in depth at a future time. But suffice it to say that my strategy didn't see someone in that 4 through 8 range as being a core player necessarily for me. So I was willing to move down. It wasn't a part of my build in terms of how I wanted to go about it early. And so the trade down, it wasn't like I was going to have a hard time picking between people there anyway. So the trade down for me before I was on the clock was fine.
And I think that's a strategy that we kind of push on people. I guess you could say. I don't know how else to say it. I just think that that's where the value is this year. And I know that you've done it in your startup drafts. I've done it in mine so far. But like the second, third, fourth round, fifth round are really juicy. And I would rather be picking there than picking one of these guys at the top. I think that your teams look a lot better when you do trade out of the first round.
Yeah. Have you in those bigger, especially in those bigger lineups? I think it's a big deal there. And it's about 30 to 35% in terms of warp expectation.
Have you ever traded up into the first round of a startup?
Not recently.
I mean, I don't think I ever have. And I think it's just because I value my picks so much. And when I get into these drafts and I find myself trading up a lot to get players, I feel like I'm losing something somewhere else. And then I constantly have it in my mind, maybe I should be trading back to recoup that. And I would rather be trading back to not recoup what I had lost trading up before, but I want to trade back to accumulate more assets later on. And I think that that's a philosophy that I think that that's the right way to go. I don't think that you should be trading up a ton in these drafts.
And especially if you don't feel comfortable doing it. And that's kind of what you're saying. That's just not who you are. And, we can run numbers and do all the scouting in the world. But ultimately, if you don't feel comfortable doing something, you shouldn't do it. And, there's people that will tell me in the strategy sessions and we're talking about the book and those sorts of things that, hey, listen, I don't feel like I'm good at selecting deeper running backs. It's not something I'm good at, or I've identified something at a different position. Build through what you're good at. For me, ultimately, it's a comfort thing, and we'll get to that in a couple minutes with one of my latest pick. But that's certainly that. Ultimately, when you have to press the button, you got to feel comfortable about that, and that's a different, that's a different sort of story. So yeah, I ended up taking. I'm not going to go pick by pick on everything, but I ended up taking Evans at 207. That's right behind Juju Smith-Schuster. It's, I believe, receiver 6. I get Russell Wilson at the turn at 212. He is behind Carson Wentz, behind Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson. I think he's quarterback 7, if memory serves. I take Amari Cooper at the turn, notably ahead of some guys like Julio. Again, I wanted a high floor build at receiver early on. I love Julio. I'm probably higher on Julio than the market. I'm just concerned about longevity and trying to fill one of these receivers early with how my plan is to build. That was filling that longevity was a key portion of it. So I took Amari Cooper at 301, 25 overall. I thought maybe the most surprising picks went right, basically sandwich my picks, right? I pick at 212 and 301. The 211 and 302 picks were, I mean, it really interesting to me. The guy at 211, and it's the same owner, guy takes Hunter Henry as tight end 4 at 211. And then at 302 takes Evan Ingram. Yep. So is attacking the premium in a way that is going to essentially box him into starting 2 tight ends, which is an interesting, it's an interesting approach. And he goes Barkley at 2 overall. So he's got 2 tight ends in Barkley, and he doesn't pick for a while. It's going to be interesting to see if he gets boxed out at quarterback.
So it's interesting because the tight ends that have went so far are Kelsey went first, Kittle went second, Ertz went third, and then it looks like Hunter Henry went 4th, and Evan Ingram 5th.
Yeah.
See, so first of all, and you had brought it up before, the Kittle thing. Like I don't see how you can make the selection of Kittle over Ertz, and I'm probably not as high on Ertz as most, but just like you said, I mean, this kind of goes to the PPR does not help him, and so with him, you can't predict the long touchdowns and the long plays. So that's why I think that he's getting inflated just a little too much. I just don't think that he is in the class of Ertz and Kelsey.
Yeah, and people are sort of saying, "Ooh, tight end's a lot more valuable," but you have to think about yes, but you have to think about how it applies to certain people. 3 points per reception for running backs doesn't really help LeGarrette Blount all that much,
Yep.
So just thinking, and that's obviously an extreme example, but you got to think about those things. And just seeing Kittle at 10, we did a draft earlier in the year. It was 1.5 for tight ends. And I think Kittle went right around the 1-2 turn. So he goes even a little bit above that. It's the same range, same group of players in there. But certainly over a guy like Gurley, I mean, and, going over Aaron Rodgers and Deshaun Watson. And it'll be interesting to see how that team sort of builds it out.
What do you make of Gurley falling to 203? I think we're getting a little too cute here, right?
I mean, trade up for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's insane that he fell. Like, how do you make the selection of George Kittle over him? Because it's tight end premium. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. The same thing with some of these receivers. Like, I love Michael Thomas, but I'm taking Gurley over him all day. I don't really understand the thought process of him falling to 203 here. I guess the tight end premium probably pushed him down because there was 2 tight ends that went above him.
Yeah, but I mean, he goes
or three. I'm sorry.
He goes like 10 picks after Kamara.
Yeah,
there's 3 tight ends,
2 quarterbacks,
3 receivers. Yeah.
Oh yeah, in between.
And yeah, I think there's I might be missing a receiver. I think there's 4 or 5 actually receivers that go in there. But yeah, I mean, it's just that looks like a clear tier break. And if you had told me that 6 months ago, I would have probably laughed at you.
I agree. Yeah,
it's an odd, it's a lot of recency bias, I think. And is there concern about him going forward with the knee? Sure, but it's it's probably dropping him down too far. So this is, I think, an interesting 306. I'm sitting here. It's interesting. I end up ultimately taking Kerryon Johnson. I tried to trade down for like 4 hours. I mean, I must have sent 50 offers out. I was texting you, sort of fretting about what was going on. I think it's good to talk about these sorts of things and how we go into it. And one of the things that I always do is I look and see if I pass here on position X, what's going to happen?
Mhm.
And I looked at quarterback, and I basically boiled down 3 different builds at quarterback. I still have all of them open to me after taking Russell Wilson. So I haven't really boxed myself out of how I want to build the position. I feel okay passing on it. I have, basically a bunch of different puzzle pieces that I'll cobble together depending on who goes next. And so I felt okay passing because I figured that I can, if worse comes to worse, I could take quarterback with my next 2 picks. And if I absolutely had to, I could get away with that. Receiver and tight end, I wasn't willing to reach. They're just going too high for my liking. I'll figure it out later on. It's sort of my plan that they would stop being taken this early, that this owner probably wouldn't double down with a third and the fourth round.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
of those things. I think the pace will slow down at tight end a little bit. And there's 5 or 6 guys that I like relatively close in value. So it basically boiled down to a running back receiver question. I already had 2 receivers. I have to start 3 in this league. Can start up to a number that I'll probably not start. I think it's 6.
Mhm.
I think there's 3 flexes. There's 3 flexes. So I could start 6. One of them is a super flex. So obviously, I think the name in the brightest of lights was Tyreek Hill.
Well, that's what I was going to say. People don't know this, that Tyreek Hill is still available to you at 306.
He's still available to me at 306, and I thought a lot about. I thought a lot about it, and I think the more I think about Tyreek Hill, the more I don't think anything is going to happen to him criminally. The
Yep.
more I think about it, I think the quiet and the time is actually good news for him in this particular case. Not all cases. I think in this particular case, it's good. But there's a massive risk there. And one of the things that I really try and commit to early in a startup draft is don't miss, and don't take an unforced error early, because it'll hurt. If you can hit 6 times in the first 6 rounds, that's a big deal. And hitting can take, just not losing a ton of market value or getting 6 starter seasons early in, right? Those are big deals you can start your team really well by doing that. And it's just, I feel really comfortable saying that Tyreek Hill won't finish as the 30th most valuable player. He's either going to be a lot higher than that or a lot lower than that. And that was scary to me, taking the pick there. I thought a little bit about Julio. Julio goes 3 picks later in a really productive, aging well, model that I identified in the book. I felt I like the upside. I sort of worry about his longevity from the injury. Could he be an early retirer? It doesn't seem like that. He doesn't really fit the mold for that, pedigree wise and productivity wise, but injury wise, that's a concern for me. It's a Gronkowski like concern, specifically with Julio. And ultimately, I sort of was doing that, and I was driving home from picking up my daughter, and I said, honestly, the pick here has to be Kerryon Johnson. And I said, that's the thing I feel most comfortable about. And that's what that if I take him, I know I'll feel okay. and that's essentially what I did. And I didn't feel great about any pick there, because there was a lot of players that I liked. And sometimes that's the hardest time to make a pick. Later in the draft, when there's only a couple of people you like, it's really easy to narrow it down. But there was 5, 6, 7 of my kids trying to pick one of them. It's tough, but that's essentially how I did it.
Well, I mean, that's also because you like a lot of guys in this range, right? Like this is the time where you want to be making your picks. This is the juicy part of the draft, at least to you and I anyway.
Absolutely.
So you text me, like I guess my take on the Tyreek Hill thing is I am willing to take that risk at this point. So at this point in the draft, 306, he is not yet gone. In the startup draft I did a month ago, he went 109. So I mean, from
before the news or after the news? That's
no,
before.
that was before the news. So I mean, that obviously is having an effect on this. But I'm with you. The fact that we haven't heard anything else about it is, I think, is good for him, and the fact that he's also not on TMZ every day and things like that. I think at this point I'm willing to take the risk, but he actually is not a guy that I'm targeting in normal drafts because I don't expect him to get to this pick. Um, Kieran's a favorite of mine too, but I think that this goes to, and Chad Parsons says it all the time. Um, if you are going to feel sick about not getting a guy on your team, you just take him.
Yeah.
And so I remember seeing, you sent me the list of players that were available there, and Tyreek and Julio and Kieran Johnson and Brandon Cooks and a bunch of guys that you like. So I actually suggested you, can you get a 2020 second and trade down like 5 picks? And
no market to do it, man.
yeah. And you're just in one of those leagues that there's no market. Some leagues you get in and everyone wants to trade up for picks. So when I get on the clock in situations, are you in like a group me chat too?
Yes.
So every time a pick goes up of mine, Karen on the Top Dog Dynasty podcast makes fun of me. It's always pick is available. And so I always put it out there so that I can at least I at least get it out there, and maybe I'll get an offer or something. So, yeah, I definitely would have traded back if I could have, but if you couldn't, I really don't blame you. I think I would have taken Tyreek Hill there. But ultimately I would rather other people make this decision for me.
Yeah. And that's certainly a thing. I think the most compelling offer that I got was to basically move down 4 rounds, and I would have gotten a first and I think a second next year. Ultimately,
not enough.
Yeah, and I just, that feels like a cop out.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it feels like a solution in search of a problem to me. And I get the future first value. I get all that. I am a proponent of the undervaluedness of future picks, and we've talked about that. But that just feels like a cop out. And when there's your guy sitting there, even though it doesn't feel like the best value, it's okay to step up and take him. And that's ultimately what I did. And I feel I'll go to bed sleeping fine, where I would have to worry for the next 6 weeks about what's going to happen to Tyreek Hill. Not that there's not the right cost to do that at, but there it didn't seem like the time.
So I think I've traded out of these rounds more than anyone that I know. Like, I am always trading out of these. So you can't trade out of a 3rd round pick, startup pick. You can't trade out for straight up 2021st and 2022. The value's not there given the players that are available for you to pick.
No doubt. Like, and there, I was getting a 7th back. So I would have dropped 50, 60, something like that.
Still not enough. So in this range, what I do is I'm trading back 5, 8 picks, and I'm looking to get 2021st or any first or future first round pick. Next year you could listen to this podcast and so yeah, in this case, with the range of players that are available and guys like Tyreek Hill and even Kieran Johnson and even guys that you don't like, but the market shows that people value them higher. The players available there are higher. You have to drop back 10 picks, 12 picks, 15 picks, and pick up a future first if that's what you're going to do. Otherwise, you have to get like clusters of picks. Like, you're at 306 and you drop down to, you get a 5th, a 6th, and a 9th, something like that. Like, those are the kind of moves you have to make here. You can't give up the value, because if that 2021st turns out to be 111, you're going to kick yourself in the ass for passing on Kieran Johnson for the 11th pick in this, upcoming rookie draft. So value's just not there. So
yeah, I'm with you. It'll be interesting going forward. I don't want to talk too much more about strategy, because just in case one of our listeners is in this league, I don't want to get sniped. So,
well, and that's what I was going to ask. Do they know who you are?
No one has said anything to me, so we're gonna,
So they're either really smart or they don't know who you are.
Well, and people wanted me to put out the link on Twitter, and I didn't want to do that because I didn't want to tip anyone off. So, this is our discussion about it. So,
okay.
You're in a rookie draft right now.
Yeah, so I'm in a 3-round rookie mock, and it's industry led by our buddy Tim Torch, and I passed you the spreadsheet, and you can't open it. So I guess I'm going to lead into it.
Tim co-owned a team with me and didn't invite me, but you got in.
Well, I mean, I'm Adam Wilson, so there is no Katie's not in it, Chad's not in it, you're not in it. So I don't. He called out a bunch of podcasts, and he called out Top Dog Dynasty, which is my other podcast, and I was available, so I got in it. So I appreciate Tim.
He's calling out other people. I'm going to call out him. We'll have
to... you should do that. So he basically just said, call out what pick you want to take. And so I called out 104. And reason being is because I have 104 in an upcoming draft. And so this is for super flex rookie drafts. So I guess how we'll do this is I'll read out the first round and you tell me what stands out to you.
Okay.
All right. So starting at 101, Kyler Murray, N'Keal Harry, Hakeem Butler, Josh Jacobs, DK Metcalf, Dwayne Haskins, AJ Brown, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, Miles Sanders, Kelvin Harmon, Darrell Henderson, and your best friend, David Montgomery.
So I got 1 through 3. Go a little bit slower. You got Murray, Harry, Butler,
Josh Jacobs.
Okay. So DK. You took Jacobs.
Yep.
Okay.
DK Metcalf.
Okay.
Dwayne Haskins, AJ Brown, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, Miles Sanders, Kelvin Harmon, Darrell Henderson, and your best friend David Montgomery at 112.
No Noah Fant. That's interesting.
I'm at 204. I was hoping that he would fall to me at 204. So
I suspect something's coming. I think I think I'm fine with Murray at 1. I think if Murray goes number 1 in the draft, I think he's probably going to be the 101 in Superflex would be my guess.
Yes.
I think historically he has a very, very good, albeit somewhat limited track record in terms of longevity, but it's elite metrically. So I'm fine with him there, assuming the pedigree goes. I'm not a huge fan of Hakeem Butler, so at 3 seems a little rich over some of the other guys. I mean, I would rather take Josh Jacobs than Hakeem Butler.
So would I. And so that was the thought process sitting at 104 was I knew Kyler Murray was going to go in the top 3. I figured N'Keal Harry was going to go in the top 3, and I actually thought DK Metcalf was going to go in the top 3.
That 5 surprises me. Maybe not necessarily because you're in the draft in at 4.
Yeah.
But the fact that he falls past Butler, don't you? I mean, over under 16 picks. Right? Don't you think he's going to go at least a half a round ahead of Hakeem Butler in the NFL draft?
Oh, yeah. I think it's an absolute. Like, I don't think Hakeem Butler's a first-round pick. I think Metcalf will absolutely be a first-round pick, and I'm not saying that he should. I'm just saying
that he will be.
Yeah, I think that his testing numbers, some team is just going to be enamored with him.
Why is he falling in Dynasty right now? I don't understand. Is it the agility?
I think it's one of 2 things. It's either the agility or his lack of production in college. I actually think you would think the guy that broke a vertebrae in his neck, isn't that what happened to him this season?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, you would think that would be the first thing that bothers people, and I think it's the third thing. Yeah, I think with him, I think you've had so many people on Twitter just bash his lack of production that he's fallen, and these are industry people too. I'm not expecting people who aren't within industry to necessarily go the same route as this. But like I knew Tim was picking 102. So I knew he was not going to take DK Metcalf there. And I kind of expected the N'Keal Harry pick there. But
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think Hakeem Butler goes second round of the NFL draft. So
I guess the things that stick out to me most, if I had to pick three of them, or well, if I had to pick four of them, would be Noah Fant, Butler at 3, Jacobs is running back 1 at 4.
mhm.
I think that's the right range. I think it'll probably break down. And I think that top 4 is probably going to end up being a tier of a couple wide receivers, a quarterback, and a running back in super flex. So yeah, that makes sense to me. Haskins seems like a pretty good deal at 6. And then, yeah, Noah Fant. AJ Brown seems late too.
So what worries me is that Jacobs is actually going to go in the top 3 picks after he. I mean, I fully expect him to be a first round pick in the NFL draft. So I expect if this is done after the NFL draft, I would think that Jacobs probably goes in the top 3 just because he's a running back and he was drafted in the first round. But maybe we put a little bit more emphasis on pedigree than others in the industry. But that would be something that I worried about. I have no issue taking Jacobs at 104. Obviously, in this we couldn't trade out, so I would also be fine just trading back. What about JJ Arcega-Whiteside? He was shocking to me at 108.
Seems early.
Yeah. I mean, this guy was avoiding the combine drills because he knew that he wouldn't test well, which is very smart. But I mean, teams have to know that, right?
Has he had
a
pro day yet?
I don't believe he has. I haven't seen anything on it, but
yeah.
All right, so that was the first round. Were you surprised to see David Montgomery in the first round?
No, not at all.
Yeah, neither was I actually. All right, so we're currently in the middle of it. So we are at 211, but I'll give you the first 10 picks of the second round.
All right.
So
a little bit slower this time because I'm
I know at your age you can't keep up. So
exactly.
At 201, Noah Fant. 202, which was Tim, Damian Harris. 203, Rodney Anderson. 204, Mike Weber. 205, TJ Hawkinson. 206, Debo Samuel. 207, Justice Hill. 208, Marquise Brown. 209, Drew Lock. 210, Andy Isabella. So this one, I mean, there's a bunch that stands out to me. Fant going 201, I fully expected that. I've expected he would go in the top 3 picks. Rodney Anderson at 203. What do you think of that?
I don't necessarily think he's bad talent wise there. It's running back 6. I guess the problem that I would have with it is I just don't think in terms of draft pedigree that it's going to be a decision between him and Weber.
I agree.
I think Weber's going to go 45 picks ahead of him in the NFL draft, if not more than that. And I have a hard time taking. I think Weber's going to go on day 2, and I don't think Anderson can go on day 2.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot less likely. Not that it's not possible, but I think he's in the real late James Conner range of late day 2 for that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think he has to. He essentially has to get some late push, and you have to hear it in the media, like, "Oh, NFL teams love this guy," and then someone take a flyer on him in round 3. I mean, he had the big injury. I'm really finding it hard, given how deep this running back class is. It's not really top heavy, but it seems like there's a lot of guys that are going to go on day 2 and early on day 3. I just find it hard to believe that he's going to sneak into round 2 or round 3. I can't see that happening.
Yeah, and if he's healthy, I think that's probably a different story, and maybe that's good process, maybe it's not. But I have a hard time with the injury, and this isn't a one-off injury history, right? He has been injured
several times.
Yeah, I find it. I guess I would say I don't think that's what the reality will be a month from now.
Other guys. I mean, Justice Hill. I feel like I would rather be making the Justice Hill pick than some of these other ones like Debo Samuel. Andy Isabella's in the second round. I think he's probably going to be one of those darlings. He tested really well. I have a feeling that he is going to be one of these players that you see in the top 4 or 5 picks of the second round of rookie drafts, just because people love him. And, I think landing spot's going to make a difference on how people view him as well. But, um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's 204 it was kind of tough. I mean, I was hoping Damian Harris was going to fall, but Tim snagged him at 202. So I was good taking Weber there. I mean, he tested really well. He's from Ohio State, and obviously I'm here in Ohio, so I know him well. Yep, absolutely. No, I knew he was going to test well, and he was somewhat underutilized at Ohio State. He played a lot as a freshman, but once J.K. Dobbins got there, it really cut into his time. And he really, he kind of dipped last season or 2 seasons ago. And then when he was playing this year, they would really lean on him at times. So I was happy getting him there. And I fully expect him to get taken in day 2 of the NFL draft. So.
Yeah, I think the one other thing that would stick out to me is the TJ Hawkinson over Deebo Samuel, Marquise Brown, Andy Isabella. I think that's the right pick.
Mm-hmm.
From you're probably going to get and we're just projecting at this point. Obviously, these things change, but you're going to get a likely day 1 tight end over a day 2 receiver. That's a bet. That's a good probability bet in terms of your odds of hitting.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you, because you like taking tight ends early in the 3rd round or at the end of the 2nd round. I mean, because he's going to be a day 1 pick. I mean, that's pretty much a lock at this point. I mean, I don't think you're going to be able to. I don't think Hawkinson is going to fall in drafts to the late 2nd round. I think this is the range that you're going to see him in. Is that a bet you're willing to take, or is that too risky for you taking him there?
No, I think it's a safe bet. I'm just not sure what the upside is.
Yeah,
I think it's you look at round 1 tight ends. They are safe. They're generally very safe players. What's the upside is maybe a different question. Does he land in New England? That probably blows up his market. All of these probably more than it should, but all of these things are in play. I think it's probably a fair range for him. I think he goes within 4 picks of either side of that. I think he's probably a 2nd round pick.
I'm with you. Yeah. So you actually tweeted out the other day about this seems like an NFL draft that the Patriots are going to take 2 tight ends.
Remember when they doubled down in 2010 and took Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez?
Yep.
Seems like there's some depth for that. And people instantly said, well, they can't get Font and Hawkinson. And there's more tight ends in the class than those 2. But yeah, it seems like something that they could do. Don't they just have a big time need at pass catcher?
Yeah, to say the least, absolutely. I mean, they had to re-sign Philip Dorsett, so yeah, without question. And I wonder, do one of the Iowa tight ends fall to them? I'm not so sure that even happens. Do you see them make moves where they're spending day 2 picks on 2 tight ends, or like an Irv Smith would be really interesting there. So. Yeah. He's more of that athletic tight end, but can block. So I'm with you. It wouldn't surprise me if you saw a round 2 and a round 4 tight end from New England. So
for sure. Did you want to talk about some undervalued players?
Yeah, let's do that. There was one that you texted me about the other day. Dante Moncrief.
Yeah. So as a little bit of backstory, I've going and I'm looking through some. I'm basically able to look at the historical data on some of these, the historical data on players, and basically be able to give an approximation for where they should go in the NFL draft. One thing that and essentially compare it against where they're going now in terms of, I was looking at DLF's ADP on some of these guys. And I just picked out guys that project, and we were talking about this before the show. Pick equity, right? That if you where you're picking them, where you're getting them, they're actually really good values uh, in terms of historically where they should be going compared to where they're going now.
And actually, the one that you texted me about was Josh Doxson. We talked about Dante Moncrief, so
yeah, we Josh Doxson was one of them. He actually doesn't make the list, but he's a guy that is just eroding in value. But yeah, I was looking at some of these players and guys that are based on their historic comps where they should be going in drafts. Guys that are going 100 picks later. There's in terms of non-quarterbacks, Adrian Peterson, Mike Davis, Jared Cook, which that ship has sailed. He will not be going 100 picks. My numbers would say that he should have been right around the 88th pick in a startup draft, and his DLF ADP was 193. That should probably, I bet you he lands right about at 88. I bet that's actually where he comes to. Nelson Aguilar actually was an ADP of 163. He should be a little bit higher than that. He should be a lot higher than that, closer to 70. Let's see. Moncrief, also a guy who's beaten down, again, never really produced a top 24 season, but he's in a tweener in terms of usability. Right? You ever feel great about starting a guy like Dante Moncrief?
But I just sold him today, by the way.
His DLF ADP is 238, and that's grossly low. I mean, I have him that he should be around 140. So
yeah, but that's probably going to go up somewhat because this is not reflecting him signing with the Steelers.
Yeah, excuse me. I had him actually real close to 100, I should say.
Okay.
I said 140. I had him closer to 100. It does not reflect him going to the Steelers. So that is certainly something that probably will change his market. A couple other guys that are undervalued. Demaryius Thomas, obviously injury related, and Rashard Higgins, who is going to just be decimated by the fact that there are actually good receivers now in Cleveland. But those were just some guys that I saw that I think are all of them good buys? Probably not, but it's an interesting exercise to think about why some of these guys how the market is treating some of them.
Yeah, I mean, some of them you stand out. I mean, the Higgins one, I mean, you're talking about he was a guy that was basically the wide receiver 3 in Cleveland last year, and now you add Odell Beckham, and I'm not even sure that the Browns have signed him yet. I think he was tendered, though, but he's, the wide receiver 4 there. I'm not really sure that he's going to see a ton of action, but he definitely will, be on the field in a Baker Mayfield offense, so.
Yeah, three players that are going 100 or more picks sooner than my projections would say. I think a couple of them are for fairly obvious reasons. Damian Williams, a lot of the projection takes into account the scoring of last season, which tends to be highly predictive of ADP of the following season, and his total points obviously didn't take him into account. His DLF ADP right now is 60.8, and I have his adjusted ADP closer to 200. So there's obviously, the market knows a lot on that situation, so that's why he's higher. Devonta Freeman got dinged way down because he only played a handful of games and didn't score a ton of points, and is going right around Damian Williams. They're in a similar tier. And James Washington, who is essentially at, let's see, his ADP is 88 right now, and I have him based on the data, he should be around pick 210. So there's over 100 picks of of historical reach there for obvious reasons. So I don't think there's anyone that sticks out. I think the market's pretty smart on having these guys a lot higher than their last year and their fundamental production. There's more than just last year's score going into how these numbers are generated, but it's interesting that they are that much higher.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. The Devontae, I've just never been a Devontae Freeman fan, honestly. And Damian Williams, I'm actually trying to sell him right now, but there's still that upside with him, so I'm not going to just give him away. I ended up
two. Sorry, there are three. I'm just looking at the data real quick. There are 3 drafts in this sample size where he was taken inside the top 50. He's taken 43, 42nd, and 49.
And this is also with the signing of Carlos Hyde, I believe.
Let me ask you this. One-word answer. Is Carlos Hyde good or bad for Damian Williams' 2019 value?
That's tough. I think he's bad for Damian Williams' value.
See, I think he's good.
You think he's good?
Yeah.
So well, you only gave me 2 choices here, Jordan. And I talked about it on Top Dog Dynasty podcast. I think that Damian Williams is going to have a role, like no matter what, even if Carlos Hyde takes, the starter reps at running back, I still think Damian Williams has a role, but I think it's better for him not to be there because I actually think that they are going to kind of platoon there. So I think it does affect him negatively a little bit. So,
I think it eliminates the absolute worst case scenario, which was them going early in the draft. I think that the Carlos Hyde signing probably is what rules that out. That's why I think it's good for his value.
Yes.
Who's a better player right now? Just better football player, Damian Williams or Carlos Hyde?
It's probably Damian Williams.
Yeah.
I like that type of back though. The Carlos Hyde and also a Buckeye. So I like Carlos Hyde. I'm not as high on him as some. I think, once he signed there was, this mass exodus on Twitter. I don't even know if that's the term. Massive amount of people that are like, well, there's the RB1 in Kansas City. That's the one you want to own. And as soon as I heard that, I'm like, no, I'm not sure that that's the case. I think it's more likely you see splitting time rather than Carlos Hyde being named the starter there.
Damian Williams or 112?
I would rather have Damian Williams. Yeah. I mean, right now, if I would try to sell Damian Williams for 2021st.
And I don't see that happening.
Let me tell you, I've got offers out there and it is not happening. So
yeah. I'm with you though. I think on both of those things, I'd definitely rather have the 20 just because of the value of the 2021st.
So Josh Doxson, you were buying him this week and I actually sold him this week. So you got him for like a 4th round pick. What did you trade for him?
Yeah. So I am very much going in the route of the buying depressed guys right now. And one thing that I've noticed with my roster builds and sort of how I've gone to changing some of the strategies that I've employed this year is that this is a tough time for trading. I tend to not be carrying a lot of receivers that are quote unquote rising assets right now, just because I'm not in the Chris Godwin, Kenny Galladay type of game.
You don't like that? You don't like those guys?
I'm just not. That's just not really the type of investments that I'm making at the position right now. So I have, been looking a little bit differently on how to do it. I ended up trading 403, and this is a start to QB. So it's a little bit more valuable than a normal 403. But I traded 403 for Josh Doxson and 512, which is the last pick of the draft. It's essentially a priority free agency type deal.
Yeah.
But I'm getting the pick back, which we always talk about being that hidden value. And you're getting round 1 pedigree and a receiver for essentially a slide down in picks that isn't really all that much difference in value and hit rate. So yeah, I had a need at receiver, and I'm not gonna sit here and say that I think Josh Jackson's going to be an every week starter and fill the need, but I was actually able to do that, and then I think I actually I in the same league I accumulated another share of Doug Baldwin for essentially Chris Warren, and there was some pick swapping going on. I kicked in a late second and got a 19 third out of it, or excuse me, a 23rd round pick out of it. Um, which, I like Chris Warren quite a bit, but I just don't think that he's going to survive. And there's talk today that they're going to bring in Isaiah Crowell and, all of those things. I have a hard time seeing an undrafted year 2 running back survive the process with how many picks they have and everything. So it just seems like a good bet on historical probabilities.
I'm with you. I actually really like that trade.
And between the two of them, now I have, I've basically gone from having my receivers in the league I'm not going to roster dwell, but my receivers in the league are Devontae Adams, Sammy Watkins, James Washington, now Doxson and Baldwin make out my core. And I sort of have a blend of developmental and stable and risk. And I figure together there's 5 guys that have varying levels of risk. I should be able to figure out a way to get 3 of them into my lineup in every given week.
No, I'm with you. And it's funny, right now is the time that I am slowly chipping away at the receivers on my roster.
Mm-hmm.
And so those extra receivers, that's why I'm trying to trade Moncrief, and that's why I'm trying to trade Josh Jackson, because they're, my 6, 7, 8 receiver, which I don't want to be carrying. I want to be lean at receiver. I want 5 or 6 receivers. I'm trying to get value out of them now, so I can clear up space for running backs from the draft or running backs that I pick up in free agency. I think that is good process, especially now, because these guys are in the news right now. Doxson isn't, but like Moncrief, he just signed. Now's the time that you should be selling him. I don't want to get to, I don't know, June, and Moncrief is just a guy and trying to sell him, because I'm not going to get that value out of him. So
what are you trying to get for him?
So Moncrief I sold today. So you and I had talked, and I was trying to do like a third this year in Moncrief for a 2022. I couldn't do that. I was trying to do. I was also trying to do a 2019 fourth in Moncrief for a second. Couldn't do that, obviously. I ended up settling on a 2023 and a 2024, which not too enamored with, but I'm not
a 2022.
What's that?
Tell me what the trade was.
So it was Moncrief for a 2023 and 4th.
Oh, okay.
And so I don't really love that, but I know that the team, the 3rd round pick is going to be a high pick, and I know it's a year from now, but I just don't have a lot of confidence in the owner. So I think it's going to be a top 5 3rd round pick. I know that there is some upside with Moncrief. He could be the number 2 receiver in Pittsburgh, but I am just not a believer in Moncrief. That's just how I feel about him. I would have rather done gotten a 2nd round for him. I would have felt really good, but that didn't work out that way. So I ended up taking the 3rd and the 4th round pick. So it would have been a roster slot that I would have rather put a backup running back in. So yeah, and this gives me more ammo to do that.
Yeah, for sure. What do you in terms of wrapping up here over the next what are you looking for in terms of storylines, anything you're monitoring particularly closely as we sort of trudge our way towards the NFL draft?
You know what? I'm paying attention to a lot of these running backs. Like Yeldon still hasn't signed, and he's one of my guys. The Malcolm Brown thing was really interesting. He signed an offer sheet with Detroit, and then the Rams ended up. My internet went out.
Oh, good. Can we chop that out?
Yeah, I'll have to figure that out. Are you still? Oh, you're still recording.
Yeah. Welcome back.
Hey. Yeah. No. So the backup running backs that cut out again.
Like when you started talking about Yeldon.
Okay. Wait. You just cut out again. What?
Sorry.
What? No, it wasn't you. Okay. So
I asked you what you were looking for in terms of like storylines coming up.
yeah.
And
Okay.
you said Yeldon, so and then I lost you. So
Yeah,
take it from that.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. Yeah, I got it. I got exactly where. Yeah. So right now, I'm going to be looking for where some of these running backs land in free agency. Guys like TJ Yeldon. We just saw Malcolm Brown sign with the Lions and then was matched by the Rams. So any of these running backs that are left in free agency, they're probably not going to go to favorable spots where they're going to be starting right away, but they're going to be in backup roles. And so these are the guys that I want to fill out my running back 8 through 14. So that's what I'm paying attention to now. They're going to be the targets that I'm trying to acquire in trades, and they're probably going to be more so. I'm not going to be throwing out picks straight up for them. It's probably going to be trade downs in, the rookie drafts or throw-ins when I'm trying to, acquire another player. These are the type of guys that, if they go to the right situation, where I think that they're going to be a backup and could potentially be a starter if there's an injury. Those are the guys that I'm going to be, targeting this year. So what about you?
Yeah, I'd echo that. I mean, always being in on the backup running backs is something I'm interested in. I'm from a bigger picture perspective. I think I want to look more at figuring out ways to accumulate some hidden value in terms of buying low on guys like Doug Baldwin on Bad News, right? That's a lot of what I'm trying to do in sort of fortifying the back end of my rosters. And that roster that we were talking about, where I added Doxson and Baldwin, the startup draft just didn't really yield. Watkins had not a great season. James Washington simmering. I like where he's going. I lost Des Bryant to injury and holdout and all that stuff. So I have a need at receiver, and trying to address it with bets that are a low cost but have some viability for upside, and combine it with some just beaten down stocks. And that's a lot of what I'm in the business of trying to do. Am I a huge fan of Doug Baldwin's talent? Not really, but cost is everything. And identifying guys like that and be willing to take, realizing what the value of rookie picks is, and realizing it moving around the board. The Patriots do this all the time, right? Slide down a couple rounds, add a veteran. That has viability in Dynasty as well. And I laid that out a lot in the book in terms of the odds. And now I'm just trying to do some more of that in terms of, those weren't necessarily Jordan moves 9 months ago, but now that's something I'm trying to employ a little bit more. I'm not getting too crazy. I don't need 12 shares of 80% ownership of Josh Doxson, but making those selective bets where I need to address the position in terms of just trying to give myself some more options at the position, doing those sorts of things, and not getting too wed to, I've seen some offers come my way for guys like Kenyon Drake and those sorts of players. I don't really want to be making bets on non-elite running backs right now, because there's a lot of volatility in the next 6 weeks in terms of how their stocks can be treated.
I'm with you. Jordan, I think that's going to put a bow on it. That was a good one. So, for fantasy or for Dynasty Football Analytics, I'm Adam Wilson at AJWilly2 on Twitter. I'm also part of the Top Dog Dynasty podcast at Top Dog Dynasty. Jordan is at McNamara Dynasty. You can find his work on UTH. check out his book, Analytics of Dynasty. You can get that at analyticsofdynasty.com/shop. And rate, review, and subscribe our podcast because we really appreciate it. So, yeah, for Dynasty Football Analytics, see you next time.